Well, welcome to the first departmental seminar for the spring semester. Our speaker today is Dr. Andy Bailey from the Princeton Research Station, Education Research Station. Before I introduce Andy, though, is there anybody in the audience who is a new member of the department that just joined us? If they are, would they please raise their hand and then maybe stand up and introduce yourself? I'm here. We got one here.
Yeah, I'm a new PhD student with Central. Hi.
And your name is?
I'm Norbert.
All right. And?
I'm Elena Jacobs, and I'm a new PhD student with College.
All right. Well, thank you. Welcome. It is the new year after all. So when I asked Andy to give this seminar, and then later I asked him, could you send me a brief bio? I never got a bio that was briefer than what he sent me. It basically says I'm Andy Bailey. But I've added two things, because yes, you can Google Andy Bailey, and if you find the right one, I hope I have the right information here, you can get some information. But Andy has been our Dr. Packwood Extension Specialist at Princeton since 2002. He did his training at North Carolina State University for his undergraduate and master's, and then he went to Virginia Tech for his PhD degree. His appointment is 75% extension and 25% research. It was one of the initial attempts to blend extension and research into one position. And he was the second chair position with the University of Tennessee. He is basically 75% with the University of Kentucky and 25% with UT and Plant Sciences. He's married. That was something we talked about when we took him down to Princeton to see if there was anybody he could find down there. So I'm glad that worked out, Andy. And he has two children, Noah 10 and Ellie 6. But he was too modest, so I did find out a few other things about him. In 2007, he was awarded both the Outstanding New Extension Specialist Award from the State Extension Specialists Association, and he was also awarded the High Impact Research Extension Program from the College of Ag. In 2011, he was given the Outstanding Specialist Early Career Award from the Kentucky Association of Specialists, Ag Agents, actually. In 2014, he received the Caresta, which is the International Tobacco Society Bronze Medal. And in 2015, he was recognized by the Wisconsin Tobacco Growers for service he gave them in their efforts to be viable. So without further ado, Andy, welcome.
All right, thank you, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate Mike inviting me. He called over Thanksgiving. We're outside, and he asked if I came to the seminar. And sure, this is one of the first ones I think I've given that wasn't tied to some kind of merit evaluation or some kind of promotion, so a little bit less stressful maybe than those were. So I'm just going to talk about kind of my program, what we've been doing the last 16 years at Princeton with Dr. Backer, and it's really a great situation there. It's a good fit for me. A lot of people, if you talk to people that went to started at Princeton, they would probably tell you that you got there and we probably might think about staying there for 2 years and then moving on to something else that might be better. And a lot of them never did that. And I was one of them. We just loved it there. We stayed, and I'm glad we did. As Mike said. On the background, I've been here for 16 years. My appointment there with UT and UK, mostly extension, some research. I really enjoy doing field research, though, so we do quite a bit of that. My primary responsibility is, again, providing leadership in extension and research programs, supporting and improving dark and vertical tobacco in both Kentucky and Tennessee, particularly West Kentucky, and that section north of northwestern Tennessee. As far as personally, I just mentioned right off the bat, I've had some great people that have worked with me. Chris Rogers, currently research specialist. Also Vicki Witcher, which is just hired to work with us half-time. We share her with Chris Dorsey, Kerry Knott. She's been with us for about a year. And also Bobby Hill, who's been with us for a long time. He's part-time right now, research specialist. Had some good graduate students, which when I first started getting students, that really wasn't the norm in Princeton. We able to get some graduate housing to house them, and I was lucky enough to get a great one and another great one after that. Andrew Keeney and Mitchell Richmond there, and so we're proud of those folks. So I'm sure a lot of summer interns have helped us over the years. Some local students and some not so local. We've had a few Brazilian students help from time to time, and so we've had some really good students. I've been really lucky to have some really good people. Looking at what this crop we call dark tobacco, where it's at and where we are at Princeton here. Center right there. It covers about 24 counties in Kentucky and Tennessee, 18 in Kentucky and about 6 in Tennessee, just below the border there, which is kind of a regional crop. Works out well for me. Most of the traveling I do is within about 2 hours or so. And so, that's where we have most of our door banks, for sure, all the growers there and most of the meetings. Historically, we had 4 different types of this dark tobacco. Basically the same variety in a lot of cases, but it was split up into 4 geographical regions. We had 2 air-cure types, dark air-cure types, and 2 dark fire-cure types. Out here in the western part of the Murray-Mayfield area, we call that type 23. At the western dark fire tobacco, it was called. And then type 22 would be just east of the Tennessee River, the Springfield, Tennessee area, over here, eastern dark fire tobacco. And then any dark air-cured tobacco that was grown within these 2 fire-cured areas was called one-sucker dark air-cured tobacco. There's a long story about one-sucker we'll probably tell in another seminar, but there was 2 types there. Another type grown up around the Owensboro area, type 36, Green River dark air-cured. Again, just cultural practice differences is mainly the only difference there. It's a lot of the same varieties there. We're about just over 3 hours from Lexington, and we're probably about 4.5, 5 hours from Knoxville. And being a partial appointment with UT, I usually make a couple of trips to Knoxville a year or 2 for departmental functions there. We've got about 28,000 acres of dark tobacco grown in this region, and about 1,600 growers. So we grow about 80 million pounds of dark tobacco, which if you've been following Burley, when I first came to Kentucky in 2002, there was about 120,000 acres of Burley grown in Kentucky. Now there's about half that much or less. And so back then it was, way over 200 million pounds, and now it's about 100 million pounds. So now dark production is approaching about the level of what Kentucky Burley is, getting pretty close there, and that's just a sign of what's happened over the years. Dark tobacco production, we produce about 2/3 of that 80 million pounds is going to be dark fire cured tobacco, and then about 1/3 is going to be dark air cured. And that split really just follows the snuff blends. The main use for this crop is going to be in U.S. moist snuff. And so if you look at the flat cans in the stores, you see students using it a lot of times. That's kind of what goes into it. It's mostly dark tobacco, about 98, 99% dark tobacco, maybe a small amount of Burley in some of the premium brands, but mostly dark fire cured and then some dark air cured. And of course the production that we have just mirrors what that blend recipe is. So thinking about, we know that if you look at cigarette consumption, Burley production has really decreased over the years. Snuff consumption's gone up since about 1990. It's really had some steady increases, so a lot of interest in dark tobacco. We've seen increasing acreage in the last 20 years or so. It has leveled off some, though. Finally, in the last 2 to 3 years, it's kind of flattened off some. And so again, Birdie's declining, probably cigarette consumption is going down, they say about 2.5%, 3% a year. We're probably leveling off somewhat for dark tobacco, for snuff consumption. One thing about this crop, though, most of this crop stays here in the U.S. and is used for moist snuff production here in the U.S. But in West Kentucky, of course, you'll notice these specialized barns in the fall of the year. You'll see smoke coming out of those barns. It's all part of the curing process, and we've done a lot of research with that curing process over the last 16 years or so. So tobacco is a very labor-intensive crop, and dark tobacco is probably one of the most labor-intensive types out there. Look at our budgets that with UK economics, we figure it takes about 150 man-hours per acre for burning tobacco, and for dark fire cured tobacco, it takes about 250 man-hours per acre. So compare that to grain crop production. That's a lot of labor goes into this crop, and of course we have a lot of labor that comes into Kentucky each year to help this crop. And of course, research is also more labor intensive than commercial production is. We're keeping track of these plots and individual sticks through the barn, going into the barn, coming out of the barn. Andrew can tell you a lot about that, about how that goes, making those tags, putting them on sticks, and getting them in and out of the barn without losing plots. But we've had a lot of research going on, but really the major research objectives that we have had has been, really you can break down to about two things, and those being your ways to reduce production costs or reduce labor is one of those, and also reducing carcinogens. If we can get looking at the carcinogens in the raw leaf as it comes off the farm, we're trying to reduce those as much as we can. We can't make this a healthy product for sure, but we want to make it as low in these carcinogens in the raw leaf as we can. And so that's been our major objective there, along with reducing production costs for growers. So extension and research, there much of the research extension programs are developed to address specific problems and questions directed from growers. So we're kind of right there in the middle of this production at Princeton. So you get a lot of growers coming in direct to the office, and you get a lot of questions, and a lot of really good questions too, that we can really think about, developing research programs, grant proposals from those questions that directly impact these growers. And so we really enjoy doing that. Research program provides information for extension programs. One thing about dark tobacco, it is very localized. We produce 99% of it in that area of West Kentucky and West Tennessee in the whole U.S. And there's also very little produced in other countries too. And so we probably are producing, for dark fire cured tobacco for sure, it's probably somewhere in the order of over 90% of the world's supply will be right there in that 24 county area. And so I always say the good thing about it is that you're the only one doing the research in dark tobacco, because you're the only research program with this crop. But the bad part of that is the same thing. You're the only one doing this research, and nobody really bounced off specific questions about dark tobacco, and especially dark fire cured tobacco, some of the things. So we talk a lot to growers, county agents in the area there. So we try to base the research program on about every phase of production, from transplant production on through the curing. We've done a lot of work with curing, because that's where a lot of the carcinogens come up as far as when they're produced. And so a lot of research is focused on the curing end. So looking at your transplant production, this will start here in a couple of months for us, mid-March or so. We'll start in the greenhouse with this, and we've done a lot of work with different things. Bob Pierce done a lot of work too, with media types, tray types, seed types, things like that. We've done some work with outdoor float beds in the past. Now we've kind of, since the buyout, took away the federal price support program for tobacco, and then it also eliminated a lot of smaller growers, it seems to. And so you don't see as many outdoor float beds now as you used to. We did some work with those years ago. Currently doing things like, new tray types that may be a little less harmful to the environment. We've been testing plastic trays here. You've seen the white styrofoam trays, of course. You know, styrofoam trays, styrofoam anything. It's really a bad substance to the environment. No good way to get rid of it or recycle it. So we're looking at some things like plastic trays that can last longer, we can get them cleaner and more disease-free, and then also maybe at some point recycle them a lot better than styrofoam. Bob Pierce and I have been working on that for, I guess, about 5 years now, and some other folks at other universities too. On-farm trials is one thing that I really enjoy working with county agents, and we've had some great county agents that we've worked with over the years. The worst thing about it is that on the ones that are really good, they don't stay very long, it seems like. This is Kenny Perry from Graves County. Was there for about 5 or 6 years, did a lot of trials with Kenny. There are variety trials and a few other things. We've done, you know, before the buyout, there was a situation where if a grower would agree to do an on-farm trial, he would get a half rank of a quota to do that. And so we had more growers wanting to do trials than we had trials. Now, since the buyout, that incentive gone away, and we're just down to the growers that really are interested in looking at the research. And so we still do about a half a dozen or so trials a year on farm with county agents. Used to do 20 or 25, it seemed like, a year. Now we do about a half a dozen. Variety trials, plant populations we've done in the past, copying practices, fertility questions, nitrogen, potassium, boron. Fungicide trials, tillage trials, a lot of different things, different subject areas that we can work on farm. Cultivation trials, tillage trials, we've done some of those. Bob Pierce done a lot of these, though, more than I have, but we have done quite a bit of things regarding cultivation and tillage. Tobacco, very intensively managed crop. A lot of cultivation going on historically, but we are trying to move more into reduced tillage, trying to save topsoil. We've done some good no-till trials with Bob Pierce early on, and some later on with some folks that have worked with Kentucky Fish and Wildlife, who have done as much as anybody on increasing the interest for no-till tobacco in Kentucky. A couple of guys, one from East Kentucky, one from West Kentucky, has helped a lot in this effort of no-till tobacco. We've done some research with stand establishment. Some of the main concerns from growers about no-till, getting a good stand, and then controlling weeds where you're not cultivating. But they really like strip till on the whole better than they have no-till. We're now this system where we keep the row middle no-till, and then in the row is going to be a till strip about 16 inches wide. This makes up about 40% of our dark tobacco acreage right now will be strip till tobacco. No-till is probably up to 5 or 10%. So we have seen a good increase in the last few years in conservation tillage, both strip till and also some no-till. We've done several trials. On these types of trials, you have to do more block type trials, large plot trials with growers, and just do some comparisons where you replicate blocks as opposed to small plots when it comes to tillage types. So we've done some trials just comparing conventional tillage to strip till, sometimes also to no-till in various counties there back several years ago. And overall, looking at strip till versus conventional here, fairly similar yields across both tillage types, across several, half a dozen or so trials that we did a few years there. So a lot of folks really bid into on the strip till. We've had some really good growers to work with too. Again, after the buyout, we lost a lot of interest from growers in doing on-farm trials. We've had a core base of growers in a few counties that don't mind working with us at all for little or no incentive. And, there's have really been some good research, I think, coming out of this. This is a site in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. A guy named Kent Boyd I've been working with since actually before 2006, but doing black shank plots since 2006. With black shank, that's our major disease in dark tobacco, burley also. And a grower that's got bad black shank doesn't really want to be in there with a research plot or anything else. But this guy was nice enough to let us work on his farm at his site for 13 years in a row. And so we've been there since 2006 doing variety trials, also fungicide trials, and getting good data from that where you've got a site, something like black shank you don't want to have on the research station, so you have to go on the farm to do that. So we've got some great folks like Mr. Boyd here that have been helping us do that. Other folks in Christian County, back early on when I first started in 2002, if you believe this or not, we had some guys that were putting out 500 to 600 pounds of actual nitrogen per acre. Some of them were putting out 800 pounds of actual nitrogen per acre. And so obviously way above the recommendations that we had at the time. In some cases, 2 to 3 times more than the recommendation of nitrogen. So we felt compelled to do some nitrogen rate trials. There's just one site from around Crosby, Kentucky, northern Christian County. But some of the rates that later not were being used, some of these that were within the recommendation range, like 150 to 300 pounds of N, but also going up to 500 to 1,000 pounds of N in these clock replicated trials here. And looking over 10 trials, over 40 years, 4 locations, air cured and fire cured tobacco both. Looking across there, you really don't see almost a flat line on average. If you look at nitrogen rates per yield, almost no effect on yield in most situations. A few of them where they had poor rotation, or they had some soil types not very well drained. These did see some effects of nitrogen, but nothing over the recommended rates of nitrogen. So that did a lot to help growers cut nitrogen rates back. It helped with leaf chemistry, it helped with production costs, it helped with a lot of things. And along that time too is when we started contracting tobacco, direct contracts for marketing, and on some of the dark tobacco contracts, it specified nitrogen rates, and they fell along with our university recommendations, and so that helped a lot too. On top of nitrogen prices also went up about that time. More recently, diseases like annual leaf spot have come up. This is one that's specific to dark tobacco. We hardly ever see this on burley tobacco, but for dark tobacco, we've seen a lot of this in the Purchase area and also east of the Tennessee River too. That caused some major losses back in 2016. This is a bacterial disease that can overwinter in soil, and if we get dry and rainstorms that splash soil particles up on the plant, we see this bacterial disease. It's very, very hard to control. Our standard has been streptomycin. There's probably been thousands of pounds of streptomycin sprayed in this area over the past 20, 25 years. So now we're seeing some resistance. And so working with our tobaccologist on this, Emily Piper, doing a lot of work with this, doing a lot of trials with her on this, and she's doing some great work with annual leaf spot, and we're happy to help her. So looking for label options, things that we can look for labels that may come later, some that are already labeled for growers to try. We've done a lot with topping. We've got some niche type crops out there in dark tobacco. We sell a small amount of this crop or go to cigar wrapper, and it's usually shipped to Italy from machine-made cigars, and there's probably about 1% of our dark fiber production will go into cigar wrapper. And so to make a cigar wrapper, you want a wide leaf, and so what most growers will do is they will top that tobacco down to about 12 leaves or so left on the plant. Taking the flower off, it's what we call topping. So at this stage here, you go in there, you're going to break that flower off. That's also the point in time where it's going to make the plant make more nicotine from the roots up to the shoots there, and also it's going to make more leaf and less flower production. And so there was some, if you look at the eastern district, east of the Tennessee River versus the Purchase area, west of the Tennessee River, you saw differences in the way tobacco was topped. Dark fiber tobacco was topped. Around Springfield, Tennessee, you would see it topped down to 12 leaves. In the western district, Purchase area, it would be more like 16. And the idea there, the eastern district folks would say, well, we're trying to make cigar wrapper, and it also is going to yield the same because the leaf, it's going to compensate by getting bigger. Even though it's got fewer leaves, it's going to make bigger leaves, and they're going to weigh the same and handle better than where these guys out in the west top up to 16. So weren't sure about that. So we did a lot of research with that. I had a student that did part of his master's project on that. And this is part of that work, just comparing a 12-leaf top and height to 16-leaf top and height. Ends up being about a 250-pound difference in yield, which, dark fire tobacco at that time sold for $2.50 a pound. You can figure the math up on a pretty good return on just leaving 6 more leaves on the plant. So now, most of it will be right to see it top to at least 16 leaves. Some of the newer varieties that have a shorter internode space may be top to 18 or 19. So a lot about this crop. A beautiful plant. Here, it is susceptible to a lot of things, a very fragile plant. They're like deep erosion can occur. It's on the ground, a lot more prostrate than burley tobacco. And again, this is one reason why we see more things like hanging leaf spot, I think, on dark tobacco, because it's got leaves touching the ground all the time where that bacteria is at. Again, labor intensive is even more so than burley, I feel like, because it's going to be hand harvested, but also after it's hand harvested, it's got a field wilt because it's so brittle. It needs a field wilt to make it more pliable, to put on a stick, or picking up to put on a wagon, to then come up in the barn with it. And so it needs field wilt in order to be pliable, to be able to handle it, but not so long that it's going to sunburn. If it's sunburned, it's pretty much ruined. And so this could go on for anywhere from a half an hour to 3 or 4 hours on a good day, maybe overnight sometimes if it's a cloudy day. But it takes a lot of management not to cut too much at one time, and then the sun top out in the sunburn. So putting on sticks, of course, all done manually there, and then picked up, put in the barn there, and then we're going to do some other things that you wouldn't see in an air-cured barn as far as curing. We have done a little bit of testing on thinking about how can we reduce labor costs. Again, thinking about on harvest, can we use a machine to harvest this crop and cut back on some of the harvest costs that we have there. This is a machine that we tested back in 2011. It actually cut notches the tobacco by the row, and it's going to convey it onto a wagon there. It's going to run alongside this harvester and dump the tobacco on the wagon, which that could be a big problem. Dark tobacco, very brittle at that point in time, has not field wilt. So get on the wagon there, you're going to expect probably with a big plant some pretty bad leaf breakage on that. And we did see that. We tested this. A couple of harvesters there, one walk behind cutter notcher and a Kirby type harvester that was in the picture there, and up to about 20% harvest loss we found. With dark tobacco there, I did the same thing with burley, Bob, on these harvesters. A little bit better with burley, but still we had some leaf loss there depending on the crop. If you had a big crop, a big bulky crop, a lot more leaf loss, and if you had a dry wet crop, it didn't break up as bad. But even with burley, we had some leaf loss on these mechanical harvesters, so that's why you still see tobacco. It's all hand harvested steel. So again, thinking about once it goes into the barn, we start curing on it. What's going to happen? What are we going to do? What kind of research areas there are we looking at for cured leaf? And of course, what's in the raw cured leaf is a big question for the industry. They want to know a lot about things like pesticide residues, of course, tobacco-specific nitrosamines, TSNA, we call that. You hear a lot about those. Those are the main carcinogens in tobacco. All tobacco type, air-cured tobacco types, and fire-cured tobacco, TSNA. And with fire-cured tobacco, benzopyrene is another carcinogen that's really got some interest in the last 6 or 7 years for us. It's really, it's another carcinogen that we also have to look at as far as dark fire-cured tobacco. It's just specific to fire-cured tobacco, but it's, again, things that may affect this industry in the future. So pesticide residue research have done a lot of this since about 2011, 2010. And the question is, what could the maximum possible residue levels be if we follow the label specifications for commonly used pesticides or labels for use in tobacco? So we've tested 15 tobacco pesticides in dark fire cured and dark air cured tobacco since 2011. We've seen some where we're doing the same applications. The only thing that's different is going to be the curing method. We're going to air cure it or fire cure it. And so everything's the same. It's going to be kind of like, you know, maxing out the label on what the label allows you to do. And so we've seen some differences based purely on curing method. We've seen in some cases where on some pesticides, if we fire cure the tobacco, we see less residue than if we air cure the tobacco. With others, it doesn't make a difference. But this is all, this work is being done really to develop, on the heels of FDA authority. They're thinking at some point in time, they're going to want to know everything in this leaf. And they're going to want to know about pesticide residues more closely than they have in the past. And so this data that we collect off these residue trials will be used to help develop guidance residue level, GRLs they call it, in Caresta. It's published by Caresta and other organizations. So that's ongoing research for pesticide residue work. This is some work, some of the early work we did with things like quadrus fungicide, orphan insecticide, warrior, MH30 over there, and looking at just standard applications, whatever the label allow you to do, and minimum pre-harvest intervals. What could the maximum residues be on those? And some of these, like for instance, on the quadrus and the orphan, look like if we fire cured the tobacco, we saw lower residues than if we air cured the tobacco. But TSNA, tobacco-specific nitrosamines, has been probably a third of the research that we've done, at least a third, I would say. It's got something directly or indirectly to do with TSNA levels in tobacco, in cured leaf. You probably heard about this before, and there's actually four TSNAs, the main two being NNK and NNN there, and form nitrosation of tobacco alcohol is nicotine, nornicotine, natavine, and animosine during curing. These are the main carcinogens that are found in tobacco products. And so, again, trying to reduce those all we can in the cured leaf before they leave the farm. So again, probably a third of our research or more has been focused on reducing TSNA. Research areas that include the nitrogen rate work I just talked about, pre-harvest applications of certain antioxidants, nitrite scavengers, nitrite being a precursor to TSNA, so trying to get rid of nitrite in the plant. Harvest timing, curing methods, and the main focus probably with this, we looked a lot at things like forced air, prior to first firing, in fire cured tobacco, stick spacing, housing density in the barn, early firing with certain lines that may turn yellow quicker than other lines do. Things like excessive heat, what does that do? If we get a barn too hot during fire curing, what does that do on TSNA? And then this thing called double crop curing practice is also where we're trying to run two crops of tobacco through the same barn. And so we're going to have two transplanting dates, and then we're going to harvest one crop, cure it through the barn, take it down, put another crop in there right behind it. What effect does that have on things like TSNA and other management practices? This is some of the TSNA data from the rate research, nitrogen rate research that we did early on after I started. And we saw in about half of those trials there, we saw a good increase in TSNA as we increased nitrogen rate, which as we expected to see. It didn't always work out cleanly, but on about half the trials, yeah, we did see some significant increases in TSNA with increased nitrogen rate. And one of them here, depending on what goes on in the curing barn, it can be some major increases as you increase nitrogen rate during fire curing. But thinking about, you know, this process, fire cured tobacco, it really, honestly, it hadn't changed a whole lot in about 200 years. And so we're using the same, you know, hardwood slabs under sawdust beds here. Underneath this bed is going to be slabs, which is kind of the byproduct of the sawmill industry. We like to see hardwood, oak, and hickory used in that. But much of this hasn't really changed in a long, long time. We're looking at ways that we can do some of this different that may make it a little bit less harmful constituents in the cured leaf, and also maybe cut production costs in some cases too. It's hard to really change the fuel sources here. We can use less of this, but it's hard to really change the major things that you're doing, the major steps that go on. And there are some certain things that have to go right in a barn there to get a good cured leaf product at the end. So again, we're putting back in the barn, we're building, putting slabs and sawdust in the floor of the barn, and then we're going to smoke that tobacco. Basically, it goes, it's going to go for 5 or 6 weeks. Some growers can do it in about 4 weeks, but generally you figure on closer to 6 weeks, unless we're trying to double barn some tobacco, and we're going to run a second crop through that after the first. So double crop curing, again, the idea is just to save barn construction costs. And so we're trying to take the same barn and move 2 crops of tobacco through that in the same season. So you've got 1 crop that you'll transplant in early May, and then maybe 5 weeks later, you're going to come in there and set a second crop and put a second crop in mid-June. And then you'll harvest the first crop early, in say early August, and then cure that hopefully within 4 or 5 weeks, and then take it down and put another crop in right behind it. So generally what happens with this, especially with the first cure, there's going to be some more aggressive curing practices that go on. It may get a little bit hotter in that barn. It may start, the fire may start sooner after the tobacco is housed in the barn. And it's going to be pretty much continuous firing as opposed to having some breaks in firing between each firing event. So we're going to put, this stuff in the barn. It can burn anywhere from 5 days to 2 weeks. And then in some cases, there will be a short break between the firing events. Generally, it's going to take somewhere between 3 and 5 firing events to cure the barn back. Some growers now, though, can do it in 2. They're putting more materials in the barn, and they're making it burn for about 2 weeks at a time. So there's some different ways it can be done, but still, it's the same concept on that. But again, trying to better utilize barn space and labor. The challenges of this system has been to manage the 2 crops in the field separately, because it has to be like 2 crops. It's going to get different spray applications based on the different stages that are in the season. And of course, more aggressive in the first crop. Storage and stripping, once you get the first crop down, what do you do with it? You got another crop to put in there and manage, and what do you do with the first crop while you're waiting to finish curing that second crop? So I wrote a publication, HR 196, about this several years ago that I think helped a lot of growers with this process, and it's a pretty common process now that you'll see, especially now we've got fewer growers, and those growers will be larger growers, so they need to do more double crop curing now than they used to. We're down to, before that buyout I talked about back in 2004, we had about 10,000 growers in Kentucky, I think, and now we're down to about, I think, 3,500, somewhere in there. So we've lost, like, we're probably going to lose some more as time goes on, but we're getting fewer growers, growing larger acreages of tobacco. It's just some of the data, some of the TSNA data here for the double crop curing work that we did like 2 years ago, where we were looking at things that you would do after you finish curing, how to take the tobacco down. You have to add some form of moisture to the tobacco. What effect did that have on TSNA? If you missed the tobacco in the barn versus steam the tobacco in the barn to make where you can handle it. Put it on a scaffold wagon versus if it was bulk flat onto a flatbed wagon, what effect did that have? If you left it sitting there while you cured the second crop before you stripped it off the stalk, what effect did that have on TSNA? So we were taking samples at takedown, at stripping, at delivery. We've done a lot of curing studies at the Highland Marine Research Station in Springfield, Tennessee. They've got some great facilities there as far as having small curing structures. We can replicate some of these experiments in. We're trying to get that at Princeton too, something similar to that at some point. But Springfield's been a great resource for me as far as doing fire curing research. Some other work we did looking at the effect of heat, we determined that, we know that if the barn temperatures get above about 140 degrees for any length of time, we can see maybe at least the conditions are right for some chemical reactions to go on that may increase TSNA. So we're looking for, what problems could occur if we got a barn that got really too hot. Got up to, say, 160 degrees in there, or it is intended for it to get more than 130. What's the effect of excessive heat during fire curing? The more work in Springfield, Tennessee that we did here, where we had a hot barn, we had a normal barn, where we planned on not getting over about 130 degrees. And then a hot barn where for one firing event, we got up to about 190 degrees. And what effect did that have on PSNA? It's a simple experiment there, but really had to manage this hot barn pretty heavily there. We did see some big increases, in some cases, threefold increases or so in TSNA, where the barn just got too hot. It gets over about 140. It seems like we can expect to see higher TSNA, even just for a short period of time. It seems to increase TSNA for sure. That's probably one of the more consistent things that we've seen regarding tobacco-specific nitrosamines has been the heat level, temperature in the curing barn. It's had a big effect on TSNA as a result. Just some more of that work that we did sampling during curing on those two barns, all the way through there, you really see, again, in some cases, just huge increases in nitrosamine. This was in the next year, 2012, there, where 2 ppm versus about 18 at the end there between the normal barn and the hot barn. And more recently, we have looked at ways to maybe reduce fire curing, the need to fire cure tobacco more. And the industry already knows that as you fire the tobacco more times, you see more bins of power. And so ways to reduce that and still get the same kind of product, got some of the basic integrity of dark fire tobacco in there. So one thing we thought about has been, all these barns have a dirt floor in them. But if we try to insulate that floor, now we've got some good barns out here that have good insulation up on the walls and the ceiling. And they can really hold a lot of heat in that barn. But the floor is something we have to really thought about. If we insulate that floor, is that going to make a difference in how much heat that barn can hold? And can we put less material in that barn, maybe fire it one time less and heat it if we have insulation? This is in the last couple of years, we have looked at floor insulation. This is a site from Graves County doing that with. And going in there with insulation in a newly constructed barn there. It's actually a 1/4 inch double bubble insulation, the same kind of insulation you might see up in the roof of some homes in some cases and some other structures. It's about a 1/4 inch insulation there. We're going to backfill that with 6 inches of dirt. And in our case, for research, we put thermocouples under the insulation. We want to see what the temperature is in the floor under the fires. In a barn like this, it's insulated in the floor versus a barn that's not. It's right next door to it. So again, thinking about heat conservation during fire curing, can we get by with less material going into the barn, less wood, less flat, less sawdust, and maybe fire the tobacco one last time and get less benzene powering? Again, thinking about TSNA and benzene powering here. So that's one thing that's ongoing there. We have seen some good data in the first year. It's our second year of research with a full installation. But just moving on to a few other things here. Caressa, I've kind of been involved in our International Tobacco Congress. I've taken students there in a lot of cases there. I've been involved in that since 2003. I've chaired the TSNA subgroup there for about 8 years up through 2015. I've been on the IPM subgroup. Landon Jack chairs that. I've been the weeds coordinator for that group, and also been a member of the Caressa Agrochemical Residue Task Force, where we do these residue trials in dark fire cured tobacco and dark air cured tobacco here in the last few years. But I'm really proud of students. I really like working with students, and I've had some really good ones. And this is one of them here. This guy, Mitchell Richmond, that came to us back in 2012 in Otter Hill, Kentucky. I had a study grant from Caressa to get a student. I never had a student before at all. And I said, I've got money to have a student, and we've got a house to put them in Princeton now. And so there's going to be just a big line of students waiting to come do this project on air-cured tobacco with us. And, you know, I didn't have a big line of students coming. So actually, Dennis Egley told me that there's a couple of people that did drop their name by the department. This is the first guy on the list, Mitchell Richmond there. I gave him a call, and the rest is kind of history. He was a great student for us. He was with us up through last spring. Did 2 projects with some masters and PhD with Bob Pierce and myself, and did some great work on that. He's currently team leader at the Canadian Tobacco Research Foundation up in Ontario, and doing a good job there. Been there almost a year. So Mitchell's projects first on his master's degree, we're trying to characterize curing environments in air curing barns, had a barn at Princeton and also here in Lexington, and trying to characterize differences in the curing environment in terms of temperature, relative humidity between tiered rooms, being steered and air curing. He found a lot of differences in that. They weren't necessarily highly correlated with TSNA notes, but did see how barns react during curing in these different types of situations, different locations for sure. And for his PhD, he worked on this project with Bob and myself, chemical topping burley tobacco, where he found that we can chemically top burley tobacco to eliminate the need for manual topping without sacrificing yield or quality. If we have a late maturing variety, if we make pre-bud application timings, and if we add the sucker control through harvest. So this could save growers about 5 man-hours per acre possibly, as opposed to manual topping. So a good extension project there. Mitchell did a great job with us. Andrea King is the latest student. She's here today from Western Kentucky. Nancy, Kentucky, she's from. She's also a great student. Her master's project affected potassium sources on yield quality and TSNA in dark air cure, dark fire cure, burley tobacco. She's finishing that up now. Should finish her master's this spring, we're thinking. And so we're looking forward to that. She's going to stick around for a PhD, probably work with Emily Piper and myself for the annual leaf spot research. We're proud of Andrea too. Andrea's project is going great. She's done a lot of work on this, a lot of different tobacco types, different locations, a lot of data collection, sampling, and all that. She is finding some good results as far as TSNA, where spring applications of potassium chloride may lower TSNA, it seems like, in the cured leaves. So she'll tell you a lot about that later this spring, around April 18th, right? Somewhere around there before. So FDA, another thing, I just kind of wrap up a little bit on here. FDA has had tobacco or had authority over tobacco products since about 2009, the Family Smoking Prevention and Tobacco Control Act. So what that means, they've formed the FDA Center for Tobacco Products, the CTP, and they've got an advisory committee called the Tobacco Products Scientific Advisory Committee, TIPSAC, they call it, which I've been a grower representative for tobacco growers on that since 2017, and my term will go through 2021. There's 12 members on this committee. We meet it up in Washington, D.C. about 2 or 3 times a year to look at submissions of new tobacco products, basically. And it's got 9 voting members, mostly physicians and health experts, and then 3 non-voting members, which is myself, and then they have representatives from large and small tobacco industry companies there. So think about, CTP develops new policy on tobacco products, all new brands and products and modifications. Those products must be approved by FDA now. There's different types of submissions to that. There's pre-market submissions. If you've got a brand new product, that goes in as a pre-market submission. If you've got a product that is going to be highly similar to an existing product, it's called substantial equivalence submission. And if you've got a modified risk product where you're claiming lower health risk for the product, that's a different submission. And so TIPSAC reviews all the modified risk submissions, and there's a lot of those right now going on. If you think about what's going on with tobacco and different product lines, a lot of them are looking at modified risk with heat not burn products, with things like Swedish snus, for instance, as far as smokeless types and other things. So the TIPSAC reviews all modified risk submissions. We spent a lot of time doing that. So there are some things that do affect Kentucky tobacco as far as FDA regulatory effects. There is a proposed rule that is going to directly affect our fire cure tobacco if it ever goes through, and that's the limit of 1 ppm in one of those TSNAs in the finished snuff product, in all smokers products, in fact. And so currently, most moist snuff is going to be over 2 ppm, and we've probably reduced that by about 4-fold in the last 20 years or so, but it's still twice as much as this proposed limit would be. And so if that ever went through, without GMO tobacco, it'd be tough for us to come close to meeting that goal, that limit, every year in every crop season. That could put dark fire out of business. So we are concerned, highly concerned about that proposed rule. There's also 2 other things that are called advance notice of proposed rulemaking. The FDA puts out, one of them is to reduce nicotine in cigarettes to non-addictive levels, and that's also a major concern for Kentucky Burley, because right now, if you look at regular conventional cigarettes, they're at about 10 to 15 milligrams per cigarette nicotine content, and that addictive level will be about 0.5. And so 0.4 or so will be the level we're looking at. It's about 30 times lower than where we are right now. So we're starting to do work also on things to do to lower nicotine through agronomic practices. We can do some things there, but it's hard to really get way down to that level where near that level, really. Also, a thing about regulation of flavorings in tobacco products, and so that's another thing that may affect burley production for sure in Kentucky. One thing I have learned about TIPSAC and FDA is that you would think these proposed rules would be discussed with TIPSAC. They're really not. All we really do is look at the submissions, and then the proposed rules will come directly from the FDA CGP without any discussion with TIPSAC. And so that's kind of frustrating. There we can submit comments, but as far as discussion at the meetings, that's never on the agenda. All this proposed rules come straight from FDA. Okay, GAP. I'll mention GAP, Bob, a little bit here. It's hard to get to without talking about GAP, but this is kind of overshadowed everything in the last 5 years as far as GAP programs we do, as far as extension. This is an industry-mandated tobacco educational program that requires all tobacco growers to be trained annually on good agricultural practices, and that includes modules for crop and environmental management and also labor management. And between Bob Pierce and I, we've probably done over, I'd say, 100 of these GAP trainings since 2013 or more maybe. And we've got about 3,500 tobacco growers. So that's one thing. It is a lot of going on the road this time of the year and doing a lot of meetings. But one thing we can say that GAP has brought us is that we talk to every tobacco grower in the state every year. And most commodities probably can't say that. We can say that with tobacco. We talk to every grower every year. For the extension events, this is our main extension events that we do. Some major field days, corn, soybean, tobacco. We group with the corn, soybean, grain folks on this, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that with the grain folks at Princeton each year. Also, tobacco and beef at Springfield Research Station every year. We do a twilight tour at Murray, Kentucky, and then Tobacco Expo at Springfield, Tennessee every February, coming up here in a couple of weeks. And then also do annual tobacco agent trainings. Eric Walker and myself do 2 of those a year, one for Western Kentucky and Tennessee, and one for Eastern Kentucky and Tennessee. Expenses, one thing about tobacco is different because federal funding ended for tobacco back about 1992. So all of our funding comes from private organizations, mainly tobacco manufacturers. We have got a few commodity groups left. They're very limited funds. We don't have any for tobacco that's going to offer any kind of funding for us much as far as research goes. Some major support comes from private industry, mainly tobacco manufacturers. Some a smaller amount there from chemical manufacturers, fertilizer manufacturers, but mainly tobacco manufacturers are our major funding source. But again, lots of help from a lot of good people. And I can't say enough about the folks at Princeton. We've done a lot of work with them. Folks, when I started back in 2002, Lloyd Murdoch was one that really came to me. I'd never done a fertility trial in my life. I came out of weed science programs. I've done herbicide research a lot, but nothing regarding fertility or fungicides or any of that. And Lloyd was nice to take me under his wing and showed me a lot about fertility, and also even put me on some projects with him. So I really appreciate that. I'll never forget Lloyd for doing that for me. There's some great folks there to work with, faculty in Lexington and Knoxville, county agents and growers in Kentucky and Tennessee. The staff at Highland Research Center in Springfield, Tennessee, a lot of great grad students and summer interns, and the staff at Murray State University, where we have classes in Murray, Kentucky, too. All great folks to work with. I'll kind of end with that, but just a really brief overview about the work we do with Dark Tobacco Research and Extension, our Dark Tobacco website and Facebook page there. But I'll stop there and answer your questions if we have time.
Questions for Andy?
Yes, Chris.
Andy, enjoy your talk. Question about the angular leaf spots. Is it possible that minimizing tillage might minimize that if it's an issue of soil splashing up on the leaf?
Yeah, that's a good question. The question was if you could reduce tillage, could that reduce angular leaf spot as far as soil exposure? We've looked at that a little bit, and it's hard to really tell. We've had some cases where we still see it. I think over time we are going to see a difference, though. We just haven't got enough true no-till. Right now, the strip till that we have, sometimes it's still got a lot of soil exposure there in the road, and also the residue level in the road middle is pretty thin. So it's been hard for me to see a difference between strip till and conventional on annual leaf spot. With no-till, as we get to see more no-till in the next few years, hopefully, I think I will see a difference in annual leaf spot. But we've got some growers that have thought that way and have got more no-till. Some other growers have gone the other way, where they've had a lot of angular, where they're thinking, okay, it's in the soil, it's up towards the soil surface. I'm gonna get the mobile plow back out and put that way down under, and I'm gonna till more and try to see if I can control it that way. And so that's probably the wrong way to go as far as tillage, but that's also been done. I've had a few growers last year that did that. But again, we're looking at that difference. I think over time we're going to see a difference there with till, especially with no-till. If you got good residue, it's really hard to see a difference so far.
Speaking of the no-till, you mentioned fish and wildlife. What's driving their interest or incentive for promoting the no-till system for tobacco?
That's a good question there. It's kind of an odd situation, but this started about, I guess it's been 7 or 8 years ago. Altria decided to make a partnership with Kentucky Fish and Wildlife on 2 positions where they would fund half of those positions, I believe, as far as salary goes, and their major objective would be to promote no-till tobacco. So Altria is actually working with Fish and Wildlife on these 2 positions, and they saw, I think, some benefit for trying to increase no-till in the state. They haven't done it in other states, but here in Kentucky they have. But that's the story on Fish and Wildlife. Those are the ones Altria went to. Now it's and there are also some interest there at the beginning in trying to promote additional wildlife through no-till, see more wildlife, but it ended up being Fish and Wildlife that are the ones that got involved, and not so much NRCS in this.
So that's what's intriguing about that.
It's a different situation.
It just doesn't make the sound fit like NRCS.
It's a different situation for sure. But yeah, that's kind of the way that's going. But it has helped no-till interest tremendously in Kentucky. That's for sure. I think before those guys came along, we were probably, at least out our way, we were probably closer to I'd say less than 1% no-till if we had hardly any at all. And now we're between 5 and 10%. So it has promoted that. And Rebecca?
Andy, I don't know much about tobacco, so what's bad about the sun burning? The past that you have to watch sun burning. What happens and why is that a negative thing?
Yeah, with dark tobacco, we talk about sunburn. It's just where it's going to burn the leaf tissue. It makes a black area on that. With burley tobacco, what happens? That's a different type, thinner leaf, where you can leave it out in the sun for a few days through some dew, and overnight it can actually fade the sunburn and burley. With dark tobacco, it just stays there and gets worse. And so what you'll end up, if you get sunburn on leaf in the field, in the cured leaf, you'll still see crude green. And So it really affects the quality grade of that on dark tobacco, that you wouldn't see a bigger effect on, say, bourbon, because it can kind of come out of some of that sunburn that dark tobacco won't. It's just got a fleshier leaf, more oils in it that tend to cause more damage on the surface that just doesn't go away. Yes.
Thank you for a very nice talk. Considering the extreme weather conditions, let's see more frequent and intensive heavy rain or drought, what would you expect the responses, the possible responses of tobacco production to those changes?
Yeah.
What kind of management practice we may take to adapt to those changes?
Right. That's a good question too. Thinking about how the climate changes may affect tobacco production in the future, and we know that in the last 3 years, or actually the last 4 or 5 years for us, we've seen some major storms in production areas out in that area, and this past year up in this area this past year, some major storms come through, and it has gotten where we've had guys out in the western area of the state that really have had 3 pretty bad crops in a row until this year, and this year we have a bad crop up this way, the bird crop up this way is pretty bad. But you know, I think about how we haven't really thought about how to manage climate change for tobacco really, other than you know, try to mitigate that best we can with drainage and soil type. We are looking at, you know, talking about making sure that it's always been the case, trying to find the best well-drained soil for tobacco production, because tobacco does not like saturated conditions at all. And so as we see more storms coming in, it's even more critical to have the crop on well-drained soil. It may also have something to do with the increase in annual leaf spot that we've seen the last few years, where up until 5 years ago, we had annual leaf spot, but it just wasn't the level it's been since 2016. So, but yeah, things that we can do, you know, probably trying to pick the best soil types to put tobacco on, where you can get, you know, as you get bigger storms, you get water away from roots faster. We talk about subsoiling too, ways that we can get water away from tobacco roots, things like that, all will come into play for management as climate change. Okay.
Andy, what do you think the leveling off of the snuff consumption is? Or you know, you showed the last 3 years. It seems like it's, what do they attribute that to?
It may be an effect of e-cigarettes coming, I'm not sure, but there has been some, we looked at vaping products, e-cigarette products coming out on the market, where there were some people that were probably using more snuff that may have been former smokers, and now when the better e-cigarette products came out, they may be switching now to e-cigarettes or something like that versus snuff. Not sure why, but it's been a level off the last 2 or 3 years.
Country, like internationally wise, are we a big snuff consumer? How do we compare to other places in the world?
Well, as far as the snuff that we produce, moist snuff, we call it, we're really the only one. Other parts of the world have snuff products too, but they're more dry snuff, more coarse snuff products. The moist snuff is pretty typical for the U.S. only there, but there's probably 2 dozen other smokeless tobacco type products out there around the world that are unlike the moist snuff that we have here that our crop goes into.
Does that mean the majority of our crop is consumed domestically?
It is.
It is.
Yeah, dark crop, yeah, it's probably close to 85–90% of it stays here in the U.S. There is some exported, but most of it stays here in the U.S.
Where do they make all that stuff? Where does our
All snuff?
Yeah.
Well, U.S. Smokeless Tobacco, that's our major manufacturer, and they've got a manufacturing plant in Nashville, Tennessee. Used to have one in Chicago, but they condensed that to Nashville now. And so they've got processing facilities in Hopkinsville, and it goes from there after it ages for 3 years, goes to Nashville to make more snuff. American Snuff Company is our second biggest manufacturer, and they purchase tobacco in Clarksville, Tennessee, and then it goes to Memphis for snuff manufacturing.
Any further questions?
Just a quick one on that response. You said it ages for 3 years after it's cured?
Yes,
Wow.
yes, yeah, it ages in barrels for 3 years, so that's another thing about, you think about in the bourbon barrel, they also use these things called hogsheads for smokeless tobacco, for dark tobacco. It'll age in there and ferment for 3 years. They'll go in and they'll have these warehouses, these barrels in there full of dark tobacco that's been kind of pre-processed, pre-chopped, and then they'll get in there and they'll turn them every summer. And over 3 years, it kind of ferments inside those barrels, and then it'll be shipped on the manufacturer.
Just a quick follow-up then. When they do the TSNA measurement, is that at edge of field after, or does it happen after 3 years of being fermented?
Well, both, but most of the sample will go on prior to being put in the hogshead. It'll be at the delivery time of growth.
What happens in 3 years in a hogshead?
Generally speaking, they say not a whole lot. They say you can, they got it where now they can add a few things to the hogshead, and it doesn't do a whole lot of growth, they say now. They figured out some ways to really reduce the growth in the hogshead over the aging time. So most of the sampling happens prior to that process.
Producers take a hit if they produce a high TSNA crop.
Well, the hit would be if that happened, several years in a row, it would be a loss of contract. But as far as pricing for high TSNA, there was one company, Swedish Match was the first company that did a lot with TSNA. And they were at one point, they were direct purchasing dark tobacco, and it was based on the TSNA content. You would get, if it had higher TSNA over this ultra low level that they wanted, they would give you a lower price for it. So the Swedes have been probably the forefront of all the TSNA research, really. As far as dark tobacco. Yes, ma'am.
All the vaping nicotine, where does that come from? Is that from what kind of tobacco? Or is it
Some of that comes from plant. I don't know a whole lot about e-nicotine liquids and things, but I think a lot of that might be synthetic in some cases, maybe.
It's mostly green extract.
Green extract, so
It's coming out of India and China.
other countries, yeah. So it's mostly plant-based, but other
That's
places.
true, isn't it, Ann?
Yeah,
Most
the
of it is
synthetic is actually
plant-based.
more expensive.